And welcome to the latest episode of The Altar. We've got some brown person and a couple whites. Is Jewish white? Oh, I gotta ask Whoopi Goldberg. I gotta ask Whoopi. Gotta ask Whoopi
Ashkenazi
Goldberg.
Israeli, bro.
What about Israeli? No, not you. Anyways, so we got Max and Caparata with us today, and we're gonna talk about all sorts of fun stuff. And what I mean by that is that I get to drink and he gets to go on about nerd shit and maybe some war crimes. Is my understanding. So let's go into that. So I mean, basically, you already have like an idea what you want to be talking about, right? So we got
Yeah,
simplicity
I
of
don't want
nukes.
to just sit up here and soliloquy.
Oh no, well,
so
like
if people have
some
questions,
questions.
or cracks to throw at me. That's great.
Well, let's start it off with the great one. What do you think about Hiroshima, dude, and Nagasaki? Is that good or bad?
Was it good or bad?
Yeah.
It's
Was it
probably
justified?
the worst
Was it justified?
thing. It like everything the federal government has ever done. It was literally absolutely unnecessary and horrible.
I like when people because it's like every time around the anniversary of it on Tumblr, man, there's those people out there like trying to defend it all the time. And then I'm trying to remember Marcel's post he'd done where he's like, okay, so what if the Riddler was dropping little leaflets around Gotham saying he's gonna blow up the library, and then he did it, and then some people were like, well, that'd be the wrong for the Riddler to do. He can't just like it doesn't matter that he warned them. He's like, yeah, exactly. Just because he warned them that they're gonna be dropping nukes and shit. And I'm trying to remember one
You're
person.
going to tell me that you dropped leaflets on barely literate, poverty-stricken, under embargo people living in a like semi-industrial city who, as soon as they leave, will probably starve to death because of lack of food distribution systems. That oh, there's going to be another American bombing. Happens all the time. Yeah, it was. What was it? It was August 6th. Oh yeah. So okay, we got a couple months for people to have really horrible takes on the atomic bombings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's figure.
I think the story actually begins a little bit before, in the 20s, with atomic weapons. They were always theorized about by physicists, and people thought, this should be theoretically possible to, either add atoms together or split them apart to get energy out. And just the same way we do chemical reactions to make gunpowder explosives, we can make atomic reactions to make atomic explosives. What wasn't really understood at the time was the consequences of fallout or radiation. The spectra, like the physics of and chemistry of understanding that stuff, was very infancy. I mean, it goes back to like convincing those poor ladies that painted radium on the dials of like aircraft in World War II. You know about this?
No, I know, but I know
Oh,
this
with
is
all
stupid.
they would lick the fucking brushes and
Yeah,
shit.
they would lick the brush to get it to straighten, and then every single one got mouth cancer. And here they are building planes for the government, and their jaws fall off like 5 years later. But the idea for an atomic weapon, there's of course two kinds. There's the fission, which is breaking apart atoms, and there's a fusion weapons. And so actually the scientist who described a fusion weapon, not a fusion weapon, but the process of fusion, was George Gamow, who's working in the Soviet Union at the time, in the 20s, and actually was got out before like Stalinist purges started happening. And he came to the United States and started working. And actually, this was one of his students ended up being Robert Brownlee, who was an astrophysicist, that I actually got to work under. So
Yeah.
a lot of my stories here are going to be accounting from Dr. Brownlee,
Okay.
who was subsequently a member of Los Alamos, and I think he's will always hold the record for most atomic tests ever witnessed by an individual human being.
Based.
Very nice.
Yeah, and he lived to like 90. He was fine in that regard. But so going back to the 20s, they're thinking, okay, how can we do this? You got Oppenheimer. You've got the original, idea of getting energy out of atoms was Einstein, right? E equals mc squared, where you can convert mass into energy, which is what happens in all atomic weapons. It happens in stars. That's why astrophysicists are involved in this kind of research, and which I am, by the way. So they
brag.
they would the Germans kind of dismissed this up until the 20s. The Germans were really the forefront of physics in the world. And then the Nazis came to power, and they noticed that all of the good German physicists also were Jews. And so they kicked them all out of Germany, and they dismissed atomic physics as Jewish, mysticism, basically. So if the Nazis had been slightly less racist, they would have had the bomb first.
If their fundamental beliefs were altered completely, then they could win World War II.
Exactly.
Except for that heavy water thing that didn't work too well for them either. Fucking cringe.
The heavy water.
Yeah,
they came around at the end of the day, realizing we should start working on this.
Too little, too late, though.
Yeah. So, anyways, the Manhattan Project was like compartmentalized. There were maybe like a dozen people on Earth who knew the entire scope of the project.
They were all Jews.
All Jews.
Not including the vice president. And so, people would show up at work. They were just like working on one small part of this thing. There was one guy. Fission weapon's simple. It's a shotgun that shoots uranium into uranium, and it blows up.
I thought you were saying Uranus. I was like, yeah, right in there.
And they all that was really needed was to enrich uranium to a point that if you shoot it with a gunpowder, slug, it will accelerate. It's rich enough in visible material that when it smashes into another piece of rich material, it will blow up. It's a really simple project. And so they just separated each little engineering component out, and a few hundred or thousand engineers were working on it. They test it, and FDR dies, and then they decide, hey, we should really use this thing. And they weren't sure. This is that spring to summer of World War II 45, where they're like, well, the Russians did kind of also invade Poland and Finland and are occupying all of Eastern Europe, which we said we would kind of be liberating, right? And they're like, well, okay, well, we've lost enough dudes at this point. And so we need to take care of Japan first, too. And so Japan had already offered to surrender at this point. That is a documented historical fact. The Japanese emperor, along with his government, had authorized that, yes, we can negotiate with the Americans a peace. Anything's on the table except we want to keep the emperor. And the Americans use that as an excuse. They're like, no, we want unconditional surrender because you can't keep the emperor. And then they let them keep the emperor anyways. So the atomic weapons were really just the Hiroshima and Nagasaki were science experiments and shows of force against the Soviet Union. That's all.
And Truman wanted to kill all the Catholics was it Nagasaki?
Yes, a satanic ritual by the Freemasons.
There we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
You guys got those Biden crack pipes, huh?
Yeah, we got our Hunter Biden crack pipes. I was very excited.
Let me just say, if my employer ever finds this episode, that
Don't
this
say
is
anything
me
bad.
just shooting shit for
Yeah, don't
with
say
the
anything
boys and purely for entertainment purposes.
It is 100% satirical. All statements made are for comedic purposes only. Thank you.
Yeah.
Truman is a documented member of like a 33rd degree Freemason. Okay, and the center of Catholicism was in was Hiroshima, right?
It was, yeah, I think so.
Could be.
And what it was originally, what day? It was a Sunday morning. Like they're
On
literally
God's
at
day?
mass.
On God?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways,
Shit.
that's just a conspiracy theory tangent about it. But yeah, it was a science experiment. They withheld firebombing those areas. Japanese cities were all made out of wood, so they just go up like that. And they withheld firebombing so they could better measure the effect of the atomic weapon on it. Like we're saving you for later.
Yeah.
And you know, it's horrific. Like you can see, you know, the powder flash burns. Like there are misleading things. Like I understand some people might think, oh, atomic weapons aren't real. It's the conspiracy.
There's people that think
government's
atomic
all-powerful.
weapons are not real. That's an actual thought. That people
Have you
have.
not- I thought
No.
we would. I thought somebody would like joke
Some,
about
I think someone did put like a mile-long post that I completely ignored.
That
I remember
They
this
said
post.
atomic bombs
This
aren't
is an
real.
actual thought.
Yeah, I think
I've
we all
never
saw,
seen
like-
that. Holy shit.
Or Matt didn't because you got banned that day. But,
Probably. This is the day I got banned. It's a conspiracy against me, man. I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a theory out there that the government made up atomic weapons just to scare everybody, and it was like their way of saying like, oh, we can never have open war with the Russians because like both sides agreed to détente, which was not the case at all. I mean, you can go documented like, you know, radioactive sites to this day. Like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you can see the flash burns, or Nevada, which we're going to get to. You could go all over Nevada. There's areas closed off, and you bring a Geiger counter out, and you'll be like, oh shit, I should not hang out here.
I
too
keep
long.
forgetting I live like a couple of hours away from like atomic test sites. I can drive to them anytime I want. Just get fucking dosed with radiation.
Max, can you drink
I'll be back.
nuclear water?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I thought-
Nuclear water?
Like, what do you mean? Like the water in like a water reactor, like this.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like
technically
all
it's
of those.
diffused, right? 'Cause we talked about this the first time you were on.
The
in some
water's
brief.
only there for heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, the radiation, and it's deep enough that the reactor, like the top, there's a margin for safety. Like you can boil 6 feet of water off the top of the reactor before you need to top it up again. That's a margin of safety, right? And so yeah, people, and this is something Brownlee talked about because he worked on those reactors a little bit here and there. Go visit them. And yeah, there's one guy, and you can probably find a YouTube video of him describing like the workers would just nonchalantly just go for swims in the reactor pool because it was like a heated bath. It was like a heated pool. It was like 70 degrees or like 78 degrees at the top. But if you dive 6 feet down, you start getting a lot of radiation. I mean, it would take years to kill you, but
So here's a question: did anybody pee in the nuclear water?
Yeah, but it didn't matter.
I want to imagine somebody like scooping up to take a drink, and they're just like, "Who peed in the reactor pool?"
It's like,
Do you think it's like that Brazilian fish that like he pees in it and the radiation goes up his like urethra? Like that one like little fish?
Like that little fish?
Yeah.
I just
Actually, because your reproductive cells are what replicate fastest, radioactive particles build up in your reproductive cells quickest. So yes,
So I can
radiation is stored
I
in
can
all-
give someone an STD, but it'd be radiation based.
your sperm will be radioactive if you.
So I can have
Give
my
her that
own little
nuclear nut.
radioactive Ubermensch Italian man. All right, that's all I need to know. I'm going to go to a reactor site. I'm gonna go visit Ben, and then Ben's gonna drive me out to some test site. And I'm just gonna rub my Pishkadel all over like whatever the loudest part of the Geiger counter reads.
I'm gonna rephrase what John Otter in the chat said. Uranium golden shower.
Yellow cake shower.
Yeah,
God.
Yeah,
Golden cake uranium used with radioactive material and my fucking piss
Oh god.
with not a lot of water.
So
You get a
There
metallic
is milk.
base.
It's a well-known fact that the United States used the existence of Ymr's piss as justification to invade Iraq.
mm-hmm.
Listen, there's a lot of gold in them hills.
Oh my god.
I do not hydrate.
That's why it's so.
But they had pictures of the yellow cake. That's him flaking out the dick cheese.
Dick
What?
cheese. Yo, who's not cleaning their bit? Oh, well, yeah,
That's
from the foreskin. I wouldn't know. I got
This joke
massive-
doesn't
Yeah.
work. I'm a cut warrior, bro.
Yeah, raw cut.
No,
Yeah.
I
Heroes
sheathe
of
my
Minus-
blade. I am always at the ready. I mean, it's all numbed down there. I got some extra cuts on there, unrelated to what some rabbi did in year one.
What?
I
Oh,
don't know.
really
you play with
really
a
off
couple razor
topic. Really
blades.
off topic.
You go to the UK and get teased off. From a
Someone
couple of angry twinks.
someone
you know,
brought
you know
up
how it
pegging
is.
to me. A nuclear peg.
Wait, do the twinks in the UK? They're like the Peaky Blinders.
They
Instead of
have like
hiding-
the razor blades in their hats.
I
So
need-
like
I
when
need
they
to
turn
finish that shit.
around
in their
after
hats,
like the
they
suck
hide it
job.
in their foreskin.
Well, sometimes they nuzzle around it, but they're still wearing the hat, and then the blades in the back just kind of cut.
No,
me
it's
a
in the
few
front.
times.
Isn't the blade in the front? Oh, but you put it to the back.
It's in the back of the hat, so you
You can.
Oh.
fake fan.
So someone did send me some meme about like I was like, oh, like the peg legs coming back. Google pegging to find out more. I'm like, oh god, it reminded me of a story of in like gamer chat that I used to be in. I guess there was some dude that's not in there anymore because they got roasted as shit. But him and his girlfriend or wife at the time, or they're still together. I don't know. But they got an idea of pegging, and he's like, yeah, let's try it out, right? They did it, but they didn't lubricate the strap. And she just shoved it in. I guess it was. Well,
I feel like that prostate, like fucking, like massive, like Iraq invasion level hit must have been like the most,
like an atomic.
most like
Atomic
bitter
hit.
Shock
sweet
and awe.
pain. Like he must have like came and then immediately like started crying right after.
All right, let's go
You've
back
seen,
to the.
the story.
Oh, wait.
Just one last
Oh
time.
yeah, no,
Have
yeah.
you
no,
seen
do-
the story
do that.
about the guy who shot the doctor doing a prostate exam on him because it
Oh
made
yeah,
him
that
come?
was a great
Yep.
read.
No, I
Okay.
did not.
All right, let's return to the horrible atomic holocaust of the Japanese people.
Yeah.
So they were an atomic weapon has 3 different effects. Okay, there's the electromagnetic heat flash basically of just the light radiation coming off of atoms splitting apart, releases gamma rays, and then which are like high energy light, gives you cancer, is really hot and can vaporize you essentially like a laser beam, right? Except it's not a laser, it's a big flash. So that's what hits people first. That's why there's the shadows of people on certain stone buildings or cement buildings that they literally have an atomic shadow because the stone got bleached by the gamma rays and they left a little shadow. Then their
Jesus.
bodies would still be there. If you left a shadow, you would still be there because you weren't so close to have the second part, which is the actual expanding of the air, igniting from the high heat and pressure immediately in the vicinity of the explosion. So there's kind of this, there's a flash, there's the heat expanding out, and there's like this pressure wave, and that pressure wave will vaporize, this immediate surroundings, like a few dozen. I forget, Hiroshima was like a dozen kilometers wide, or like maybe a kilometer or something like that. I'm forgetting exactly, but And then there's like the third effect. This explosion, like a grenade, there's the sound, the air gets pushed for miles around, and that can still knock over buildings and people and hurt things and stuff. And then the third thing is the fallout material. And it's especially true with fission weapons that there's a lot of fallout material. And this is radioactive particles that aren't stable and they have very short lives. So they're shooting off, you know, either alpha, beta, or gamma particles, just the Greek alphabet. So there's alpha particles are two protons fused together, basically a helium atoms core. No neutrons, but it has high energy and it's ionized and it hits unit, but it doesn't go deep. It's kind of a big particle, so it doesn't go deep. The beta particles. Let me remind beta particle is. I want to stop dumbass, although I'm sounding like dumbass. Is a neutron. A transmutation of a neutron into a proton and electron. Okay, so beta radiation, yeah, is when the electrons are shooting off of a proton, and you get a neutron, or neutron splitting into a proton and electron, and those electrons are also ionized, and the protons are ionized, and ionizing radiation. You know, it's what people complain about with 5G. I think they're complaining about 5G. And you know, those are smaller, so they get a little deeper. And then the stuff that gets deepest is gamma radiation, or the third type. You know, alpha, beta, gamma is just A, B, C, and Greek. And gamma radiation is actually just light, high energy light, higher radiation or higher energy than X-rays, and that fucks you up. So when they started the fission experiments, they leave lots of those particles behind. That you know, like the daughter products of uranium and lead and stuff, plutonium, they all have long. They are just shooting stuff off left and right. So there's a lot.
Sounds like me. That's why I got 3 kids, dude. It's crazy.
These uranium atoms are just bussing.
Yeah, possible.
The next task was to build a fusion weapon, though. So they built, you know, you take uranium ore, you put it through a centrifuge and get the densest ore, and that's going to be the richest stuff, and then you can refine it and use other naturally radioactive molecules to, you know, kind of enrich it to the point that it will combust and stuff. So that's actually all atomic weapons. First the fission weapon, and then that fission weapon, what they figured out, what they brought the astrophysicist Dr. Brownlee on to figure out, was how to make a fusion weapon, which is infinitely more powerful than a fission weapon. So like the payload of Hiroshima, payload, like little boy or fat man, whatever they called it,
more powerful
15
war
kilotons.
crimes. It's 15 kilotons.
Yes, 15 kilotons of TNT. And so, like that is, I mean, the Moab, like the bomb Trump dropped just because he could, right? Kind of on that
Why
order,
not?
right? What's the? It's 11 tons of, not kilotons. Okay, so anyways, it's enough to destroy a small city, right? 15 kilotons of payload. Of TNT equivalent, but fusion bombs can do hundreds or even thousands, which begins, you know, thousands kilotons is a megaton, right? So you're getting into megaton weapons of TNT. And Dr. Brownlee, like his quote that always struck out to me is when they did the first fusion weapon experiment and saw it, he's like, I thought like you know, he was in the army at the time, and he thought like, oh, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like we saved all our GIs' lives not invading Japan, even though they didn't know at the time that they'd been lied to. He's like, I thought that, you know, that was a good idea. We saved all those boys' lives from invading Japan, showing them who's boss with the fission bombs, and then we made the fusion bomb. And I was like, he said, there's nobody I hate that much to use that weapon on.
Mhm.
Because you're not just destroying a city, you're destroying like a county-size space of Earth. Just completely removed. Black. Just ash for 100 miles or so. Now, they figured out that they don't need bombs that big. Originally, they made bombs that big because the intercontinental ballistic missiles that they were building were really inaccurate. So they're like, okay, we want to take out Moscow, or an army column. We need, but our weapon, we can only aim it within 50 miles. Well, how do we save that? We have a 100-mile wide blast radius. So that's why the Russians built like the 54 megaton Tsar bomb, is because their
Right.
missiles weren't accurate. And then they figured
Because of
out,
the vodka.
Mhm.
because yeah, but then they started to tinker with the ratio of uranium, plutonium triggers. So one of the things that person said about nuclear weapons being real is like, oh, like a uranium trigger would instantaneously destroy the fusion part of the bomb because of the explosion, right? Well, no, what's happening is there's an X-ray burst out of the fusion core that's moving at the speed of light, and that actually reflects off of a container that then turns the whole container into plasma and then starts the fusion combustion faster than the thermobaric explosion happens. There's light moves the speed of light, and the thermobaric thing moves the speed of sound, as fast as it can move. So yes, the fusion weapons are possible because of speed of light's faster than the speed of sound by a lot. So they figured out by tinkering with the payload that you can actually get different ratios of alpha, beta, and gamma radiation out of the bomb. And obviously missiles were getting more accurate at the time. So by the 60s and 70s, like the US had figured out like, oh, when the Russian tank division goes across the Fulda Gap, we're going to do airburst gamma heavy payload, and we'll actually be able to kill all of the soldiers in the tanks instantaneously or nearly instantaneously, but their equipment will be perfectly fine. So they triggered it all to be this high, and like you just get X-rayed to death basically inside your tank, and your tank's fine. Which was like, and maybe people don't appreciate about like a nuclear war today. Like, they think like, oh, you just like wipe out the city, nobody wins. They have the weapons and they can tailor it in the field. They can change the payload in the field for different results. Like, you can load a cannon with high explosive and like a armor piercing round and stuff like that. They can tailor exactly what they want to happen. They can like X-ray the soldiers to death in their tanks. They can just vaporize them more or less, or they could also. The scariest part is they figured out how to make a really dirty explosion that just leaves lots of radioactive material. Is like an area denial weapon. Like basically, like in World War One, they were thinking, oh, like we can use like mustard gas and it stays low, and unless there's wind or rain, it just like denies the area. Like the enemy can't pass through this low area when they shell it with gas. So they were thinking, oh, we'll just deny total areas of movement to the enemy by doing a fallout load on the Dnieper River.
1-800 war crimes.
So they're tailoring all this shit perfectly.
Jesus
Now,
Christ.
they figured out that they needed to start doing this underground because there's only so much Nevada to nuke. And so they started moving it underground.
There's only so much Nevada we can nuke. We gotta figure out something else. More
Las
sustainable
Vegas is
future.
right there, bro.
Yeah, you could nuke Vegas.
Yeah.
Nuke Vegas right back to the fucking. Just make it glass. Make it a sea of glass. Make it a tourist
Ben's
trap,
outside the
huh?
range. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
So
Lots of mountains in the way.
yeah, very good. Well, we'll get to that in the last
we'll
part.
get
But
Don't worry about the winds coming your way over that mountain or anything, or the rain.
No, they were so they would like they figure out they need to do this underground. The U.S. and Russia both signed a treaty. They're like, there's a little bit too much fallout in the air at this point, and nobody wants that, right? So they start doing these underground tests, and they develop a lot of techniques for how to measure the results and the effects and stuff. You've got different camera detectors that pick up the radiation. You can actually, the main way they did it was with seismographs to measure the earth shaking underneath. But essentially, all of these atomic explosions end up being an artificial volcano. You're creating a huge thermobaric pressure cell underneath the earth full of freshly vaporized rock. And it wants to go somewhere. So they still shoot out. And they originally used mine shafts for these tests because it was cheap and, we should start doing this underground. Oh, there's an old abandoned mine in Nevada, right?
And the
Ben
poor
and I
teenage
know this.
kids
We've been
trying to
Nevada.
get it on got fucking
Mhm.
nuked. That's what they get.
And, yeah,
That's what you get for violating the NAP, bitch. All right, continue.
so they put it down there, and so Robert was telling me the first underground fusion test that they did. They put down this mine shaft, and they're like, well, we don't want anybody to fall into the mine shaft that we just put this nuke down. Well, because they're setting up all the test equipment around it, right? Yeah, nobody wants to fall in. So they put a manhole cover on top, and it's a few days in between actually launching the weapon and stuff. And they go up to Robert Brownlee, and they ask him, hey, you're an astronomy guy, right? What do you think the speed of that manhole cover will be if it gets shot off of the top? Because essentially they created a cannon, right? It's just the manhole mine shaft explosion shoots the manhole cover up. And he said, okay, I'll do the math about that. Like, this should be the payload. This should be, how much pressure it should have as it moves up the thing. And he measured it, and it had not only enough velocity to get out of the Earth's gravity, it would have enough velocity to escape the sun altogether.
Jesus.
And so the first
Baller.
integral, they took
Okay,
20,000 frame per second footage of the mine as they set the nuke off, and they got that manhole cover flying through the air for 3 frames.
Yo, listen, that's how we send people to the moon. That's how we get to Mars faster, right? Like, how long does it take to get to Mars normally?
This gave them the idea for Project Orion, which is a real thing.
Okay, go on.
Project Orion was an operation to build, you just build a giant spacecraft with a huge concrete steel bumper, and you just shoot a nuke out the bottom, and it blows you up into the sky. And the theoretical, it's 10 times as efficient as rockets are at getting you into space.
No shit.
Yeah. I don't know why they don't do it.
Yeah.
Another thing that they shot down this time this is the 60s. Another thing they wanted to do but decided not to do is they really wanted to beat the Russians to the moon. It was kind of a serious thought in NASA / the government's head that the Russians were going to get to the moon first because they'd done everything else first, right?
Yeah, that's why they faked it in Texas or Hollywood. My bad, Hollywood. Yeah.
And so they came up with Operation Nuke the Moon. This is a legit thing too. You can look this up. Where they were saying what we can just do if we want to get some moon rocks, we can just blow up the part of the moon and have some moon rocks hit us. And so some astronomers were like, let's not do that. And then after that, they, the U.S. stopped testing. I mean, when's the last?
God, it's been a while.
Yeah. By the U.S.
Wait a minute. last time they tested?
1992.
I was about to make a joke, like it was like a month before
Holy
COVID
shit,
happened.
1992.
Yeah, I'm like, no, like it's been a long time. Been a long time.
No, I thought there were more, or I thought it was not that recent.
Like yeah, like you thought it was longer than that?
Yeah, I
So
thought it was like-
supposedly, I mean, North Korea did some tests recently,
No,
but
I'm just talking about the U.S.'s
Oh,
testing
okay.
Yeah.
culture here, because
just kidding.
no, the Koreans tested one a few years ago, right? So okay, the 1992. I guess I haven't been alive during an atomic explosion. That's interesting. The
Wait, what year were you born? I keep forgetting
the
I'm
US
old.
nuke test. The US nuke
I keep
test.
forgetting I'm
That's
old
what
as
it is.
shit. Well, not as old as other people, but out of us four, I'm the oldest piece of shit apparently. Good for me.
Old man.
Old Man River. Continue.
What was I just thinking about though? The testing.
Oh,
Was
like
it
they haven't tested in a long time.
Yeah, they haven't tested in a long time, but they have lost. Like
They,
so
they how many
the thing
nukes
that's
they've
scary.
lost. Government
This-
efficiency, people.
The scary thing, like the reason I say like nukes are scarier than people realize. There's a couple of things I want to get into. Is so one, the first thing was is they can like kill you with an EMP burst and like leave all your material goods perfectly fine and walk in. Two is that they are. God, I just had the point there. Oh, they lose the weapons all the time. They have lost. They admit that they've lost 6 nuclear weapons.
Wasn't
They
there a
admit
movie
that they've
about
lost.
Some of All Fears? That one nuke was missing and they're freaking out.
They
That
don't
was
freak out about it.
Yeah,
They don't even care that much. They'll be like flying. Like this would happen routinely in the 70s and 80s. They would be like just flying, transporting, because all the B-52s had a full loadout, like ready to bear, and were in the air 24/7 during the height of the Cold War. And like people would just fuck up and accidentally hit the deploy button. They didn't ever arm the nukes because the nukes have to be armed with a special key, but they would accidentally drop nukes on the U.S. all the time.
Yeah.
Base.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
Dunk and hit into a lake or in the middle of a field somewhere. They have to go pick it up. But like 6 of them, they never found, and those are like generally over water is where they lost them.
So, let's talk about Ancapistan with nukes. Oh, wait, really quick.
Well, okay. Yeah,
No,
I
no.
do want to finish like two.
Oh no, you
more
finish, and then we're
nukes.
gonna start shit posting here in about 6 to 7 minutes. So
Yeah,
you
okay,
continue.
okay.
Clear it up.
Let me finish. The third thing that's scary about nukes that's worse than you think is that they are the field, which kind of plays in the second one. The field level of deploying them is extremely low. It's not actually up to the president. Soldiers, or Air Force commanders, and naval commanders, when it comes to like a U.S. fleet, like any aircraft carrier has several nukes aboard, and they have at the captain level authorization to use a nuke if they deem it defensive.
Don't like that.
And like Air Force commanders, like if they're in Korea, like they have deferred to the, like the Air Force captain that's the bomber department detachment, like sailing around. This is why North Korea and Russia freak out all the time when we're doing war games, is because like those nukes are fucking armed and ready to drop, and they have authorization to do it at a captain level. Okay, like the nuclear football is made, like that's the made up part of nukes. Is like the president doesn't actually, like, have like that control over it.
It's like the ICBM system domestically is like what he has a right to, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the president has the control over like let's launch all the missiles, but we have, this is getting into the Ukraine shit, right? Is that like we're deploying a missile defense system in not only like on the border of Russia, so close to their ICBM sites that they can't actually retaliate in time for us. So there's no longer mutually assured destruction if we deploy our missile defense system in Ukraine, which is why Putin is saying like, this is the red line. I cannot. There's no safety in the world anymore if we don't have mutually assured destruction. That's what's kept everything good for the last 70 years. And now you're saying,
well, that's why
the U.S. is a mono nuclear power.
What's all like with Russia? Like the quick sidebar is that why the Ukraine shit is interesting is because they want to put like is it like a NATO make it a NATO country, but NATO is specifically anti-Russia. So it's like if you have that there, then we have a big problem with Russia at that
When
point.
I was in the 90s, they were open discussions of bringing Russia into NATO. Like people were thinking like, hey, world peace. These people overthrew the communists for us. They're our best friends. They should be in
Not
NATO
real
with
communism, bro.
Which like that's
It was state capitalism, bro.
That's what drives me insane about the fucking like the Trump Russia thing is like these people, like the Russians, no more brother wars. I like vodka. I like AKs. Okay, and sorry, tonight I have my Rittenhouse special with.
Oh shit! Yeah, show that baby off real quick.
Yeah, Ep.57.
How many
I got
pedophiles you
tricked out a
killing
little
with that?
different. Sorry.
Like how many pedophiles you kill it with that right now? None yet. None yet.
As far as the courts are concerned, none.
So, as far as
none your business.
As far as my GTA roleplay, 7.
Oof.
Like, why can't we just be best friends with the Russians right now? Like,
well, don't worry. I mean, I doubt the EU is going to try to step on toes, considering they're like the godsend of oil for the entirety of the West.
Oh yeah.
Area.
Well,
So
they're closing down all their nuke plants and burning oil instead, and Russia's the only, and Norway, but Russia's really the only place they can.
The major one. Norway's like what? Like I can't even think of like the fraction comparatively to what Russia could do.
Yeah, I mean,
oil.
So think about who in NATO is opposing, or who is asking for the Ukraine not to join. It's the U.S. and the U.K.
Really, I didn't know that.
Oil producers in NATO don't want Russia and Germany to be trading oil, and so they want. They're pushing for Ukraine to join NATO so that they can have an energy monopoly on exporting oil to Western Europe.
Okay.
But if they all just converted to nukes like France is like the ultimate detente right here. France is saying, just convert to nukes like us. We get 70+% of our power from nukes. We don't give a fuck, And sure, we stole the uranium from the Congo, but whatever.
Well, you know France is interesting because, like, when I got into healthcare debates, like years ago, this is like my first time. Like, I was still like a Republican or whatever on Tumblr, and I was getting into these arguments about healthcare. Like, your shit's stupid. Like, France is like, healthcare, still it's socialism, but I'm like, how are they doing? Like, how are you cutting costs? Nuclear power. Nuclear.
So, one last point before I close on nukes here. Dr. Brownlee, his kind of his final project in life was to be a whistleblower about this stuff. And one of the things he discovered is that they could take the daughter products of fission materials. And so this is where my other degree comes into play with atmospheric and oceanic science and climate. So when it comes to climate, so they could use the cloud formation is highly dependent upon high energy particles hitting the atmosphere, causing and ionized particles hitting the atmosphere, causing the alignment of water molecules so that they can form droplets, so that they can form clouds. And if that doesn't happen, then you don't get clouds, it doesn't rain, and there's drought. So what they figured out was that they could seed radioactive particles into the jet stream, and those particles they emit in random directions. And because of that, it would cause the water molecules to be randomly ionized in different directions. Traditionally, the ionizing radiation is coming from space, and so it's all down facing. So clouds can form. Well, if you seed radioactive particles from the bottom or in the middle or sideways or stuff like that, you can suppress cloud formation. You can induce drought above certain places. And so he actually wrote a paper describing this from the Department of Energy, which was the civilianized version of the nuclear program, over to NASA to say that we need to be on the washout. We need to monitor fallout in the atmosphere because the US or another power that's enriching visible materials could be seeding clouds in inducing climate change that way. And we're going to get like a bunch of disclaimers under this episode, but I'm telling you, this is an astrophysicist and a climate scientist. This is a real thing. Ski resorts pay millions of dollars every year to seed clouds right now. Okay.
I'll see the cloud right now, baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like when they did in Vietnam.
Yeah, and Vietnam as well and stuff. So that they could figure out how they could put a subtle amount of fallout material into the atmosphere and completely starve the surrounding area and change the clouds suppress temperature. When there's no clouds in the air, temperatures go up, right? So because the H2O is a greenhouse, it's actually a primary greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, and if it doesn't form clouds, it's not reflecting any light. So it is much more efficient than CO2, and that when it just is latent in the atmosphere, the humidity is much higher. So that's what I wanted to end on, is just saying climate change, the CO2 thing is it is a greenhouse gas. Water is a greenhouse gas, and they can turn it into an even more efficient greenhouse gas by cloud seeding with radioactive fallout. So it's all a conspiracy. Everything the government tells you is a lie.
So climate change is a psyop from the government to I had something I was going with it. I was going somewhere with that.
It's a horseshoe conspiracy theory where you just admit to everything you're doing, but in a different way, so that it's still true, but it's also a conspiracy.
Well, if climate change is caused by the general CO2 emission of humans participating in an industrial modern economy, then it's all our fault and we have to pay taxes, right? But if climate change is potentially caused by the government seeding visible materials into the jet stream, then we can point our finger at a specific person.
Here's an interesting question.
I feel like it's probably just both.
Actually, Linda in the chat, Max, was asking, do all the people in your field know the truth?
I think if you get people one by one and explain it to them, it makes complete sense. And then you drop on them that they could be doing this right now, and how would we know? Not to mention the geopolitical stuff that they just kind of ignore. Scientists are whores for the government, and they will do anything to get a paycheck. And so they are really, really good at avoiding any thought that contradicts or might get in the way of earning that paycheck. So if you get them one-on-one and kind of build up to that, they will work on it. But I mean, this whole COVID thing has shown as well that, they're all sluts sucking up the teat of the gentle taxpayer.
I heard titties and taking it from taxpayers. That sounds kind of base, because if you don't pay taxes and you suck shitty taxes, that's just free money, baby.
All right, so we got about 8 minutes.
Climate change is a conspiracy to keep us broke and starving, so that women cannot develop big naturals.
Dead ass.
I thought breast sizes increased over the years. I thought that was a thing that happened.
just in
Well,
general.
some of it's
Exactly.
growth
That's why they're
hormones.
peddling climate change so hard.
That's why my
You don't
ass
want-
is well, no, my ass is fat genetic wise either way.
Show me.
Well, Australia, highest carbon emissions per capita, biggest tits per capita.
Yeah, but then they're Australian. That's like a net
It worked.
negative. That's not a plus in any way, because then you have to deal with Australians, which are a mixed bag. If you said
Some
like
of them are extremely based, like the
oh
Ned Kelly guy.
probably, but yeah, but that was like in the cowboy times. It's kind of hard not to be based back then. Like everybody was based. Like even like the horrible people that we all hate are still technically based in one way or another, if you want to use a term the
Like,
original
I
way.
hate Teddy,
Technically.
but
Technically,
Teddy Roosevelt, but it was
Yeah.
so based.
He just took one thing from every political spectrum and really just kind of made a goulash, a cosmic gumbo, if you will.
So I think Ben and I are gonna have to do an episode going out west and like
Yo, I've
trying
been
to stick
I've
our
been
dick
talking about
into
for the like
mines.
longest fucking time, like the Moonlit Network. So it's like like maybe we don't do this every week, you know? Like this is like a once a month or something, and then all you fucker, I'm just gonna bring Max in because Max is more interested in doing podcast episodes than fucking Ben, bitch.
Okay.
Hate you. But no, like little fucking network, where you guys like Yimmer talks about, I don't know, a twin carom every fucking week or month.
It's just 3 hours of like me on crack,
Yeah.
just saying the same thing in a loop, but in different ways.
So I just did a speedball and I'm in a gay
Just-
bar. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And anyways, we're gonna use log cabins
Oh,
because Abraham
oh,
Lincoln
no.
was a bisexual.
No, that's what it is. Yimmer's like, I just took a bunch of poppers, bro. Like I just did a popper. Let's go. We're going to the gay club.
And no,
So he's
it's
relaxed.
just me on the toilet because I'm just shitting. Like it's just a loose ship. It's
Yeah.
like a water slide with like you're just throwing
Yeah.
like rubber duckies down, not fat American people. It's just all going down, just through and through.
Oh, so quick thing, because we have some new people. Well, new people for actually probably Yimra maybe, because everyone in like the people in the chat right now are mostly from Frank's show. Quite frankly, like Linda's in there, John Otter I know is from over there, and I
And
don't know.
Frank keeps inviting me back, but I just like he doesn't give me like a solid date to like prepare to come back on. So I
Oh
should go
really?
back on Frank's
Maybe
show.
you should. You absolutely should. But
I
like,
can plug this podcast while I'm there too. Be like,
Yeah,
can
you-
see me
you can.
regularly.
because the thing is, what
Mhm.
we oh, he's like Drew is too. So like we what I normally do over here with the guys is we just talk shit constantly. Sometimes I've guests on like Max to talk about things. Mainly it's just we just talk about the news and we get from the anarchist perspective, anarcho-capitalist perspective. I just want you guys to be very clear on what you're listening to. We're not communists. We're capitalists, but we hate the government. So putting that out there because it's like, oh yeah, like
I just
hang
don't
out,
like
chat.
things, and
I came
don't
off
like
as
being
pretty
informed.
clearly anti-communist / anti-government, right?
I'm like the
Yeah.
only one with like the little fucking was it the Greek leaf shit where I try to be like, all right, well their perspective, okay, and then that's it. That's about as close as we get to being egalitarian on that.
Bro, I like. Oh, can we talk about
Gay
the
sex.
ooh how an anarchist society would have the best gay sex? No, I'm just kidding. Maybe it would. I don't know.
No, that'd be the anarcho-communists because
Nukes in an
almost all of
ANCAP
them
society,
are
though?
so gay.
No.
Personal nukes.
Oh yeah, personal nukes, of course. Yes, that and Capistan. No, I want to say like way earlier about the UN. They have something in their I don't know what declaration or so like not declaration, but like
This
something in the
Charter
laws
of Human Rights
that
or some shit.
that they believe that people should have a small amount of like a nuclear weapon, like something that was like below a certain level of the fucking intensity when it blows up.
Just like the fat man from like Fallout, just like a little like shoulder launched fucking catapult like mini nuke.
Well, no, the
Exactly.
UN like charter. So the proliferation is that every nation on Earth has a sovereign right to explore nuclear energy and to produce and cultivate it. And they can enrich materials which are not usable in an atomic bomb, which is true. Like both are true. Like that's what Iran's been doing for 30 years. If Iran wanted a nuke, they could have one in 2 weeks.
Or they just don't say they have one if they're smart.
Well, I mean, like we don't give the Ayatollah enough credit. I've been on record saying that the Taliban's based, and the Ayatollah is also based in saying that nuclear weapons are haram. Okay, they are, and chemical weapons and biological weapons are haram. It's the U.S. funding and China funding that is proliferating bioweapons into general society. Like, there's conspiracies COVID doesn't exist. I mean, I think we all got COVID at this point, and it was the mild
The
version.
clap.
I got
mine
COVID.
from a bus seat.
Bioweapon out of it.
The clap, that is.
U.S. funded Chinese lab. Okay,
It's like an applause.
released at the World Military Games, and that's just my thoughts on that. But not confirmed, but it's definitely true.
No, the COVID came from a bus seat in Indonesia.
Iran
came from a
never released no
Glorio.
bioweapon on me. What do I have against Iran? Russia never released no bioweapon on me. Come on.
Yeah, right.
No Russian ever called me incel.
Not yet. Give it time.
Yeah, give it time, baby.
Yeah.
All right, boys. I think we're gonna call it for the evening, and I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 or something at some point. I don't know. See how it goes. Look, not even a part 2. Just have Max on again. Max, I feel like every week you know what? You're just gonna be the 4th fucking co-host. How's that sound?
I'm happy if you have another guest. Just I will sit in the background. I'm good at. I like that one show.
I'll just disable no, just audio from you, no video. Just say like,
you need
yeah, that sounds right.
vaguely
Sounds right.
blonde,
Sounds right.
Right?
Yeah, it's a bunch of black-haired kings around here. We need a little white Keanu Reeves type beat, anyhow.
Yeah, the non-Asian Keanu Reeves.
As I brought up earlier. Don't worry, it's not like a Tumblr post or it's faked.
So awful. But to everyone in the chat, thank you for coming out, and to my boys in the chat with me, have a good night.